I'd like to welcome Max and Stacy to the stage. Josue unfortunately could not make it, so yeah. So Stacy, you're in the middle. So yeah, unfortunately, Josue had a flight cancel on him. I'm not sure how that works, but that's
don't fly Air Europa.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to make do without him. But I wanted to start off with this question because for me, having visited El Salvador 3 times now, the rapid development is absolutely astonishing. And you know, what we've seen is that the previous 20 or 30 years under sort of IMF rule was very different than what you know, the administration under President Bukele. Can you guys talk a little bit about what the getting out from under the IMF was like and how that's affected the country, because what we're seeing is just rapid development and things like that, and the restrictions of the IMF, I guess, aren't there anymore. And it's interesting for me because, at least as far as I can tell, the opposition parties to President Bukele are very much in alignment with the IMF and wanting to take their loans and so on.
Well, I'm not sure if it's the IMF restrictions being lifted, but having a leader, finally, after 40, 50 years. I do think the previous administrations, I think you could see from what happened just yesterday. Yesterday, President Bukele opened a new hydroelectric dam, and today he's reducing energy costs for Salvadoran people by 14%. Now, this is a dam, the 3rd of February dam is called, that under the 3 previous administrations, the U.S., all those sort of multilateral agencies helped them, you know, with loans and sort of money to build it. And they just looted it, right? So Bitcoiners, and President Bukele is a Bitcoiner, he's also a leader, and he hasn't looted the economy. He hasn't looted all the money they gave him. To me, that says that, you know, that the same sort of agencies and world bodies like that, and the United States and the leading Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg sort of people, that they now like call them all sorts of names like authoritarian and stuff, when it was the previous administrations just looting the economy, forcing people, the Salvadorans, to flee the country because there was no hope, there was no possibility for ever building something in El Salvador. Now El Salvador is building. President Bukele builds, and that's what you're seeing. And that's a Bitcoiner mindset, and I think you'll see through the course of this conversation that he's a Bitcoiner, he builds, and it filters into every single part of how he manages his economy.
So there's like a difference between sort of the fiat mindset of the previous people and President Bukele has a Bitcoin mindset. Max, what's your perspective on his leadership and particularly how it differs from the previous leaders with respect to their, I guess, compliance with international authorities, if you will?
Right. Well, I think of President Bukele as really a cross between Thomas Jefferson and Mike Tyson. You know, they're in the same person, and he's has all the values of America from 1776, and El Salvador is in fact the new city on a shining hill, or I should say, shining city on a hill. A little dyslexia every now and then creeps in. You know, the new Statue of Liberty is a volcano, and people are flooding into El Salvador. You know, you've got reverse migration now. More people are fleeing the U.S. to go to El Salvador than the other way around. We're getting close to that point. So this is, but the IMF and central bankers are a constant threat for everyone around the world, because, and now that we've entered the fiat money apocalypse, they're getting really nasty. You know, the IMF, as I've said for many years, various central banks are essentially financial terrorists, and they wield weapons of mass financial destruction, as Warren Buffett calls them. So they're not going to go away. They're only going to get nastier. With Bitcoin, we have the kryptonite to their super fiat money craziness, but the battle continues, and we're attracting all the best and the brightest to do battle against the IMF. You know, the IMF, I saw something yesterday which reminded me of the IMF. It was a pedophile who had set up a tent across the street from an elementary school that was selling fentanyl, and he had a sign that said free samples. And I said, well, that's like the IMF, essentially. So, right? This is their modus operandi. You know, this is what they do. So, but we have volcano energy. We have President Bukele, who's a once in a 500-year leader. We have Max and Stacy, you know, who are at the airport welcoming people one to one as they arrive, and they welcome, and you know, it's a great welcoming committee. So we think we're on the side of the right.
I also kind of feel like, you remember in on a nation-state level, we're kind of at the same stage as 2010 when WikiLeaks adopted Bitcoin. And remember what Satoshi said is WikiLeaks has kicked the hornet's nest and the swarm is coming for us. Fortunately for individuals, I think Bitcoin fixes a lot of things for individuals, and individuals now have sovereignty, but we have a network of individuals around the world. Every Bitcoiner is we basically protect each other in a way, and that we're so many of us. But on a nation-state level, we're at that point as President Bukele has kicked the hornet's nest on a nation-state level. And you saw that with Argentina, as when they applied again for a loan, yet another loan, in the past year. Remember what they did is the IMF said, like, it wrote into the contract that you can basically adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. So we're at that stage on the nation-state level. But as Max said, like, I think it's a little bit too late for them. I think that, the barn door is open and the horses have fled.
Well, so let's talk about some of the evidence about all of this, because what we're seeing is it kind of is too late, because we're seeing the evidence of El Salvador developing, and every country around the region is sort of looking at it and saying, okay, why can't we do this? Can you guys talk a little bit about the development that you guys have been seeing? I know I've certainly seen it in the brief time that I've been visiting in and out of El Salvador. But what have you guys seen, and how has the country developed since I guess going on a Bitcoin standard?
So El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as legal tender in in September 7th, 2021. By March of 2022, the war on gangs was declared at the very end of March. I think they all go hand in hand, right? Because here you had this perfect money, and it was the antidote to Bastiat's law of what you see in the United States, what you see in Europe, what you see around the world in the world of fiat, which is when plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society. Over the course of time, they create a legal system for themselves that justify it, and a moral system that glorifies it. And you definitely see it in the U.S. I mean, we don't need to go into that right now. But part of that is also those Enlightenment sort of thinking is, the only fundamental rights that matter are your God-given rights that everybody is born with to life, liberty, and property. So here, President Bukele set in motion the freedom for his people. Like, he liberated his people with individual sovereignty. Like, he gave them money, which is the opposite of what a dictator would do, which is give his citizens individual sovereignty. And when we were first there, when we arrived before the war on gangs, you always did think, like, well, those people are not free, and they'll never be able to be free, even with Bitcoin, because they can't, their physical being is not free. So I think every decision he makes, I see as he is a Bitcoiner, and the low time preference, and the always focusing on liberty, because even his Bitcoin policy is under an umbrella of economic liberty. He established his policy of economic liberty first, and then Bitcoin followed.
Max, your perspective on what he's done and sort of the direction that El Salvador has taken since going on a Bitcoin standard.
Right. I guess the notion was that why should we build up this country and have 20%, 30% of the revenues extorted by these gangs, right? So we have to address this gang problem, this violence. And I think it's pari passu with Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin came first, and the war against the gangs came shortly thereafter, because, as I've said, Bitcoin demonetizes violence. Bitcoin is unconfiscatable, therefore no amount of violence or coercion can get my Bitcoin. You have to come at me with something, peace, if you want to do a trade with me. And so that idea, I think, applied to the nation state is one where we are going to be intolerant of violence. We're going to be intolerant of these gangs. We have Bitcoin as legal tender, and we want to promote a meritocracy. And we want to promote economic freedom. And he's got 92, 93% support from the voting public who he works for. He's very much a public servant in the traditional sense, where he is doing stuff that you would like to see your government do, which is provide security and build the infrastructure. And the dam that was just released, the hydroelectric dam, he's very proud of this, as he rightly should, because the goal is to reduce electricity costs by 14, 15% for the country. Here's a country, their inflation is going down. Their energy costs are going down. Their GDP is going up. Their tourism's up 100%. This is a new post-Fiat money world. The Fiat money experiment that started 300 years ago is ending. And it's really, we're going to see now what model thrives for the next 100 years. It's not going to be the nation state model that we've come to know. It's not going to be the central bank model that we've come to know. There's going to be a new post-nation state, post-central bank, Bitcoin-based model. And this is being built in El Salvador. And as Stacy calls President Bukele really a Medici, somebody of the Renaissance. We have a new Renaissance, someone who's building, the time preferences. Let's look out 100 years, 150 years. And I think that's true.
Lorenzo the Magnificent, right? Of course. So Renaissance 2.0, I often say. But I think the Renaissance, what happened in Florence, also led to the Enlightenment eventually, and it's the same battle against the controlling forces of like the Vatican and the apparently the divine rights of kings, as they called it at the time. So I think it wasn't Lorenzo the Magnificent who painted the Sistine Chapel or created the David or Mona Lisa, right? He inspired others through classic leadership. Like, he had the vision, he had the courage, because you see a similar thing against President Bukele. So at that time, the powerful global institution was the Vatican. And what did the Vatican do to Florence? They excommunicated every single citizen of Florence at one point in the battle against Medici. That was a very powerful tool back then. And what did the global institutions do now? They threaten to pull you off what is the thing? The fiat system, the SWIFT, the sanctions, that sort of thing. That's how they control in the same way. But if you have Bitcoiners on your side, Bitcoiners are honey badgers and they don't give a fuck, right? So they're the same as, right?
Indeed, and I think what you guys are saying is that economic liberty comes first, and we kind of have to address this elephant in the room, which is that there are a lot of human rights groups that are criticizing President Bukele, rid of habeas corpus, changing the Constitution to let himself get like a second term, stuff like that. seemed pretty intent on sort of portraying him as a dictator from the forces outside. What's your perspective on this, and how do the Salvadoran people see it?
Hold, let me check my calendar. The date when they repealed the Patriot Act. I know it's in here somewhere. Oh, wait a minute. They never did? Oh, you mean the state just grabbed all kinds of powers and overrid the Constitution and the Bill of Rights? And they never, oh, I see. So as President Bukele said, he said, don't tell us what to do, we're going to do what you do. You know, as I was, he's got 92, 93% support. The rights of 7 million Salvadorans are what matter in this instance. That's his job, is to protect the human rights of his population. And they were being terrorized by gangs who were extorting something like $6 billion a year in a $28 billion economy, and involved in the most heinous, atrocious acts of violence. And, you know, you look at this, what's going on in the past couple of weeks, and the images coming out of the Middle East. Well, okay, they're quite heinous and atrocious. That was the daily life for Salvadorans for decades. But I didn't see CNN cover it or Fox News cover it. Oh, because you know, this country's in our quote-unquote backyard, and we are a colony. It's a colony of America, and we're not going to cover it in this way. So, you know, the double standards and the hypocrisy is ridiculously overhyped, you know, and thank God we now are in a new era, and I think that it was in the Bible. You say who was last is first, right?
I think also look at the U.S. Constitution and look at the law written by Post-Fiat. Like I said, the only legitimate reason for the state is to protect the individuals and their rights, born rights, their God-given rights to life, liberty, and property. Ask the people, and there are people here in this audience from El Salvador, from Soyapango, from Apopa, and they'll tell you, ask them if they had the rights to life, liberty, and property under the occupation of the gangs. They didn't have those rights. President Bukele restored those rights. He gave those rights back to them, and that's why you see joy in the streets. That's why you see them free to come travel here. That's why he is the greatest leader that we have right now in the world. That's why he's so popular everywhere around the world, across Latin America, you see paintings of him here. Like, people know him because he restored those rights, and that is more important. Those people did not have those rights. So if you're a human rights organization and you say, you know, you want to return to that, so they want to deny the human rights to all those people that were trapped in Soyapango, and Soyapango is the most, densely populated area of El Salvador. Max and I, at that time, we were living in El Salvador when the gang war was first declared. We were staying in a hotel called Nico Urban, and almost all the employees lived in Soyapango. And this young guy, Gustavo, who was the bartender there and served all the coffee, and I remember it was like 2 or 3 weeks into the gang war, and his face was all smiley, and I asked him what he thought, because, you know, there were certain Bitcoiners out there on Twitter who were not in El Salvador who were saying that he was, calling him names like dictator. And I asked him what he thought of President Bukele, and his big smile, he said, I got off the bus last night, and for the first time, I didn't have to give any gang member $1. And imagine the humiliation on a daily basis that this young guy had to go through, that there was some man there on the street who just forced him to give him money. Like, that was over. The humiliation was over, and his freedom was restored.
Mm-hmm. It's quite powerful. And there are sort of like these two different narratives, right? We have one, I think, that obviously in El Salvador, his 94% approval rating sort of speaks to. And, you know, within Latin America, South America, it's, his popularity has surged. But I guess a lot of Western countries, his reputation's a little different. And that contrast is very strange to me, because the people on the ground seem to say one thing, the people up at the top are saying another, and this sort of conflict is resolving itself in a way where the people on the ground, like the people that actually see it, that seems more powerful in some ways than the media industrial complex. What do you guys think about like the role of the media in this whole thing?
I think El Salvador is cheap as a result of this misperception. The arbitrage between the reality and what we're being told is gaping wide open. Property, the country's GDP is going to double, if not triple, in the next, 10 years. So it's a classic emerging market story, and the media and the rating agencies and the markets are always slow. It's no such thing as an efficient market theory. Markets are incredibly inefficient, and here they're mispricing this country by a long shot. I've been in the business for 40 years. I've never seen such a wild mispricing in my life. And so now, we're moving from the early adopters to some of those what we would call smart money is starting to move in, and then in 5-10 years it'll be the common wisdom will be, wow, you guys are so lucky, you saw that, wow, and it'll be like, no, the question is, why were you so deaf? Not why is the propaganda so strong? Why were you so deaf? Why were you allowing yourself to be manipulated so easily by propaganda? And this is a story in the US and in the UK and in Europe, which is fascinating to me, is that people totally forfeit their agency to have self-awareness, and they outsource it to the worst elements, the kakistocracy, as I call it, the worst elements of society, and then they wonder why they missed it, why they missed Bitcoin at $1. Even though it was blatantly obvious what was happening. Because, you gotta at some point take responsibility for your own thoughts. You just can't constantly rely on somebody else to think for you. So here's a classic situation. So you've been there, anyone who's come there, their first thought is, the story here is wrong. It's just wrong, and that's it.
Yeah, that's don't trust, verify. You could fight all you want on Twitter to somebody who's never been there and has only read the Wall Street Journal or the Bloomberg or New York Times. And until they come there, they could see for themselves. We're all Bitcoiners, and if you were around in 2011 or 12 or 13 or 14, there was the same exact thing. It was condescending. It was like, those idiots who think they're going to change the world with that stupid magic internet money. It was the same thing, and that's how they treat President Bukele. I don't think he minds it, because why not be underestimated, right? And then just keep delivering greatness. That's a great place to be, because let them mock, because it's just way more joyful. You could see it on his Twitter account. He loves to say, "I told you so."
Especially with like the bond ratings and things like that. But it's not, the Western world has one perception, but we're seeing in Latin America a very different perception. And I want to talk about a candidate in Argentina that is very much taking pages from his playbook. What are your thoughts on this movement sort of spreading, especially in Latin America?
I also want to point out, when you're saying the Western perception, and it's just bizarre that the Enlightenment, that I mentioned Post-Fiat, that the U.S. Constitution says exactly what President Bukele is restoring to the people of El Salvador, and that they don't even recognize it. How far they've come from where they started is just remarkable. And why they almost fear that liberty. They're now in a proof of stake world, right? They're like a giant Ethereum is the United States. They're the bosses of the global system right now. And why would you want Bitcoin Nation to exist? Milei, well, again, like I said, that moment of 2010 when Satoshi said about WikiLeaks is like he's kicked the hornet's nest. Because President Bukele kicked the hornet's nest of, woke up those global control freaks, the global Vitalik, who get to benefit from that system. Remember, the contract that the government of Argentina has signed with the IMF says they can't adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. So he is limited, but I think he's like very, very libertarian and very economic liberty is his motto. So he'll have to find a way around it. He won't be able to do what President Bukele has done because also El Salvador is more like a city-state in terms of the size, whereas Argentina is quite huge. So he'll have to do it in a different way, but definitely he's inspired the world, and we'll find out tomorrow.
You know, you can't have capitalism without capital. You can't have capital without offering a savings rate. So you can't have a savings rate unless interest rates are higher. And interest rates are now getting back to a normalized rate that we should see in historically. And what we're finding out is that some economies can't live in a normal interest rate environment. The United States cannot survive in a normal interest rate environment. The United States is going belly up. It's going bankrupt. It's insolvent. It won't be with us much longer. And we shouldn't bemoan this. We shouldn't feel sentimental about it because we have new countries, entrepreneurial countries, by dynamic leaders like El Salvador, and now it's spreading to the region. So you have all over the region countries are saying, you know, hey, this is a vote winner. Politicians like votes. This is a vote getter. We're going to make our country secure. We're going to go on a Bitcoin standard, and we're going to pursue economic freedom. And so they are in a position to be the winners in this new reality. You know, competition never goes away. This is the thing that socialists, I think, their fundamental problem is that they think they can somehow get rid of competition, like they can make competition go away. But that's, nothing in nature, nothing in the universe, nothing in physics, nothing in anywhere in the cosmic reality eschews competition. And I think President Bukele loves to compete. Like I said, he's like Thomas Jefferson meets Mike Tyson. In his own way, he's just biting the ear off the IMF. He's like, he's like, not only am I fighting the IMF, but I will choose the day to bury them. I'm like, right on, brother. That's the way we do it. I like it. I'm inspired. That's why I like to hang out there. The guy's he's a fighter, and he's also super smart. And I think I'm smart. And then when I talk to the president, I'm like, whoa, this guy's really smart.
I also want to say, by the way, as we're talking about the IMF and this global system right now, where El Salvador is some sort of like haven of just tranquility, like amidst all this chaos. But Max and I have been around for quite a while. Like, we have our Cubo Plus students here from El Salvador, and I was like, yeah, Max and I, we met in 2003, and one of the kids was like, oh yeah, that was like 2 years before I was born. And I was like, fuck you. I was like, damn. It's gonna be our Bitcoin anniversary in February, by the way, 21. But, back in our early days of doing financial news reporting, at the same time, the IMF and NATO were worried about going out of business. Remember that? They had no business. IMF didn't have anybody to lend to. NATO didn't have anybody to defend because Putin was friends with Blair and Bush, and everybody was like worried about what they were going to do. Lo and behold, within 3 years, there was total chaos, and there's been nonstop war. There's been financial crisis and collapse all over the place, and they're back in business. That's how that proof of stake model, again, I'll bring it back to Ethereum. That's like the Ethereum world, always in chaos, always having to manipulate, always having to change the protocol and things like that. And that's the world they run.
Well, so we've been talking a lot about sort of like attacks from above, right? The people that are part of this global monetary system sort of attacking El Salvador. Let's talk about attacks from below, because I think you guys have had quite a bit to do with that. One of the things I've been impressed with El Salvador is that there's very little shitcoining, and that's something that I didn't expect, because as soon as anybody announces any Bitcoin thing, you see CZ there, you see Brock Pierce there, you see Justin Sun there, something like that, and there's usually some money exchange in the form of tokens or something. And what I was impressed with is that El Salvador does not have that. Can you tell us why? What's going on?
Well, okay.
Okay, you can look at Stacy Herbert right here and Max Keiser. I mean, obviously some of those people showed up in El Salvador, and that's why I stayed, because we met President Bukele. I like President Bukele. Max liked President Bukele. We're impressed. You're inspired. He's great. And then you looked around, and I'm like, I'm not letting that fucking asshole ruin this fucking country. And when the Bitcoin office was announced, like people were, before everybody knew it was going to be me, like you'll see people are like, yeah, yeah. And then they were like, all the circles in El Salvador, they were like, fuck, it's Stacy. Like all the shitcoiners were like, fuck. And, they just don't even bother now at this point, because I will find out and I will destroy them.
Well, all right, so I think this could be a really good object lesson, because obviously there's a lot of different people from all over the world here, and this is a common thing where Bitcoin will get popular, and as soon as Bitcoin gets popular somewhere, almost immediately the altcoiners come in. Yes. Like, what are some lessons that you've learned? How do you sort of discredit them and sort of show that Bitcoin is the way and not these altcoins? What's the strategy?
All right. Well, there is Stacy and myself. Came up with a plan, and the plan was, first we had to get some kind of government communique or government statement, and this resulted in becoming the Bitcoin office. So the Bitcoin office is a line of defense against shitcoiners. We have a policy, what we call the 360-degree policy, which is that shitcoiners can come in through multiple different ways, which led in part, not substantially, but in part, to the education programs and the Cuba Plus program, because shitcoiners like to give away educational things and get in that way. So that was another finger in the dike, another way to keep the shitcoins out. We then pushed to get a new law that says pretty much that Bitcoin is money, everything else is an unregistered security. So in that instance, the argument becomes, well, you're shutting out innovation. And the counter argument is that the Bitcoin maximalist brand is so substantially contributing to the success story of El Salvador that any incremental gain you might get from an altcoin pales by comparison to be the Bitcoin maximalist brand and how it plays out over the entire economy. So it'd be like Nike has a brand. They could get into the chocolate chip cookie business, but Michael Jordan is not going to be selling chocolate chip cookies for Nike. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't dilute your brand and
your first mover advantage, because the best and the brightest who actually build. El Salvador is unique because it does have a hugely popular and inspirational leader who gets it. So he doesn't want his name associated with some shitcoin, and therefore, other people in government don't want to associate him with a shitcoin. It's hard work. Bitcoiners have to show up. Max and I were luckily in a position where we could do that. I know a lot of Bitcoiners are younger and building their businesses and doing things like that, but it does take a lot of work. It's not easy. I could joke around here on stage, but it's a lot of hard work. You've got to build the foundation. You've got to build those things like the Bitcoin office, Bitcoin embassies, Bitcoin education programs, and build that solid foundation so they're not tempted by charlatans flying in and rented private jets that look successful, but a proof-of-stake guy who's already received his billions in the ICO, why is he going to do anything for you or build anything? It takes a lot of education, and it takes Bitcoiners showing up.
It sounds like it takes sort of like a very low time preference leader to execute on a lot of this stuff. And perhaps the lesson here is to appeal to their better nature, to the low time preference sort of like future, instead of your political survival, which oftentimes is too common among politicians. Oh, I can get this, I can claim this win or something like that. We have 30 seconds. What are some of the things that you hope El Salvador does in the next 5 years? Just quick 10-second.
Well, I think President Bukele he does everything right. But now we need Bitcoiners to come to El Salvador. Don't trust, verify. Come and see for yourself. Hopefully you'll build there and come join Bitcoin country.
I will restate the goal I made in November of 2021, El Salvador debt-free by 2013.
Wow.
By 2013? That was like 10 years.
2030. 2030. I was trying to make it rhyme. Debt-free by 2030.
Very Joe Biden.
We're on the path, by the way. Please work with me on this if you're out there.
And notice the two guys have the big handbags. I walk off with that one.
All right. Give these guys a round of applause. Thank you.